My relationship with cannabis, I still have one. Like, I still use cannabis, but I try and use it in a much more mindful way, which is skills that I learned when I did like mindfulness, dialectical behavioral therapy around cannabis use, um, and just being mindful and reflecting on like where I'm at with my relationship with cannabis, which is something I never did when I was in high school. I think I can recognize like when it's getting to be too much, when it's impeding my performance, whether it's like, just taking care of myself, whether it's at school, whether it's at work, whether it's with friends. I'm not going out as much because I'm just staying in. Like, I can recognize when it's a problem, and I know kind of what my limits are. And like, I don't want to be smoking in the morning. I know when I can recognize when it's an appropriate time to smoke. Meanwhile, when I was in high school, I was high constantly, like between classes getting high. So, I mean, those are skills that I've been able to learn, but it would have been beneficial for me to be taught those skills from like a harm reduction approach to substance use education. So rather than just telling me like, you shouldn't smoke weed, it's bad, and it could cause like schizophrenia or psychosis, and not really even differentiating between that and getting into like what that actually means. If I just had a harm reduction approach that said, there's a spectrum of use, and like using every day is much worse than just using occasionally. Or if you're using shatter or edibles, they're much more potent. Or if you just try and stick to CBD weed, it'll be a lot less, it'll like decrease some of the risks associated with it. So these are all things that I think we could be telling young people who use cannabis, that I've had to figure out through like trial and error and the many experiences that I've had since then. But yeah.
Try to help young people think about where they use cannabis for starters, right? Decreasing your use in public space where it may be easy for the police to identify and to ultimately catch you in the act of consuming cannabis. To think about the cannabis you possess. Even though cannabis is legal in this country, it is still illegal for young people to possess cannabis if you're under the age requirements, so 18 or 19 years old, depending on the jurisdiction. And so you can still get a ticket for that. If you're caught in possession of what's considered to be illegal cannabis, so that's cannabis that was not purchased from a licensed retailer and grown by a licensed producer, then you're subject to a series of criminal penalties. And you can tell whether or not your cannabis is legal based on whether or not it has an excise tax on it. So I always encourage young people to ensure that their cannabis is packaged in a container that has an excise stamp on it, so that the police, if they were to stop them, know that it is a legal product or it looks like a legal product. And then to think about things like ensuring that they don't drive after consuming cannabis. And again, this is something particularly salient for racialized young people who are, again, disproportionately subject to police stop, search, and question activities. But for all young people, again, this relates not only to your physical health, because driving under the influence of cannabis increases the likelihood of one getting in an accident. But if you're stopped by the police and you're caught driving impaired, this is, again, going to have negative impacts on your life. Even where you store your cannabis in your car, and having open cannabis or open cannabis containers in your car can create a number of different problems. And so I think, it's important when we think about harm reduction and we think about minimizing risks, that we don't think about those only in the context of protecting our physical and our mental health, but also our social well-being. And the potential for criminalization, even after legalization, is great. In fact, there are more laws around the cannabis plant now than there were before legalization. And so that means that there are more ways in which people can get caught up in the criminal justice system for cannabis-related offenses.